What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Slim, aka Coach the Don, and we are the Benchwarmers. Today on episode 3 of Real Spill, we have a very special guest, Miss McCoy, who is going to be talking with us about mental health awareness and coping with the drugs in the Black community and what it's doing. So before we start, can you first just tell us all about your profession?
Yes, my name is Destiny McCoy. I am a licensed master social worker. I've been in the field of mental health for the last 10 years. I've worked in nonprofit, government, private practice, working with different populations, those that are justice involved, juveniles, in the community setting. So I have a wide range of experience working with different populations over different sectors.
Yeah, so you really experienced it. Like, what did you major in college?
My major in college was criminal justice and public administration, and I started working at the federal prison in Beaumont, Texas.
Wow.
And so when I started there, I could see the intersection of mental health and crime. Right, so they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah,
and so once I really just got into that, and I had worked at a prison before then, but this time I was at a federal prison. And so once I was there for a while, I felt like I needed to further my education. So then I got a master's degree in social work, and now I'm working on my clinical licensure. So one day I'll have a private practice. But mental health and criminal justice, all those things are interconnected.
That's great. Let me ask you this. Are you one of those people that think, well, I believe that, well, I am, to decriminalize like hard drugs like cocaine and like crack and stuff like that out there? Do you believe they should like legalize it?
Well,
because it's a lot of addicts that go to jail for carrying,
He means that in the sense more to restore them back to
instead of sending them to jail.
Oh, absolutely. Okay.
Like
yeah,
prison is
absolutely.
supposed to truly do.
So the data shows that rehabilitation works, but a lot of times you're learning. A lot of times when people go into prison, they just learn how to be better criminals.
Right.
So it's not what I was doing was actually rehabilitation in that setting, but a lot of times statistics show that if a certain length of time in treatment, you're less likely to be a recidivist, which means you're less likely to come back to prison. So yes, treatment works. It's cheaper to treat somebody than it is to put them in prison.
Yeah.
That's true.
And people don't really understand that, people take the stance of lock them up, or they did a crime, throw them. That's not. If you're looking at it from a monetary cost, it's cheaper to rehabilitate somebody and have them come back out into the community and contribute like a normal citizen.
That's interesting. I could definitely believe that. What do you think are some good signs or tips for someone who has a friend that's exhibiting moments of poor mental health or like just behavior that you can like catch to help them receive the true help they need?
Well, it's so hard sometimes, especially when you're talking about the Black community, because we typically try to hide what we're feeling and not share. And what I do think about my generation, millennials, and the generation after us, we're more vocal. So we're more likely to say, hey, I'm not feeling good, I feel depressed, I feel this. So I think the first thing is listening, but also looking for the signs. Is that person eating more? Are they eating less? Are they not sleeping? How, when you talk to them, do they sound slurred? Do they sound like, they have high emotion in their voice, low emotion, high pitch, low pitch? So those are some of the signs that you can look for. Are they going to work? Or are they not going to work? And you don't want to ignore those things.
Right. So when that person does catch those signs, and it's more apparent that in the next near future, this person their behavior becomes hazardous even to themselves or to others around them, what should be like their next step as a close friend?
Well, the first thing you want to do is get them in to see a medical doctor or a psychiatrist or somewhere. You want to alert the medical officials, but also, you want to take those things seriously. You don't want to just brush them off. You don't want somebody to be exhibiting those signs and then you just brush them off and you don't do anything. So you want to seek medical attention if you can. Also, therapy in conjunction with medication, because sometimes just therapy doesn't work. Sometimes you do need a little bit more than therapy. Sometimes you need therapy and you need medication. Like, I'm not ashamed to say I deal with anxiety a lot, and I'm able to say, I need therapy and I need medication for my anxiety. But what I realized too about anxiety, about my anxiety specifically, is a lot of it's self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about anxiety, a lot of it is what we're telling ourselves, which is, I've worked in over 10 years with CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's what you're telling yourself and these things that are causing you to have this anxiety. So for me, it's medication and it's, therapy. For some people, it's just going to be therapy. For some people, it's just going to be medication. But other things that you can do outside of that also include like music. That's therapeutic in itself. Of course, exercising is therapeutic in itself. But once you stop getting the things that your body needs, you're gonna see a decline, right? So you have to be able to eat. You have to be able to sleep. You have to feel safe. That's the number one thing that I think people don't understand when they talk about, mental health. If you're not feeling safe, then your mental health is gonna be declined. Yeah, whether that's a safe living environment where you're at, you're safe at work, you have your job, your body has one job, and that's to keep you safe. And when anything is threatened, your mind, your physical being, somebody's threatening you, if you feel threatened in any way, then you're automatically in danger, and that's gonna cause you to have some mental health issues.
I agree with that. I want to know, as an expert, what do you think about the raging increasing numbers about children or just young teens in the Black community and in the other communities that are getting this self-help from medication that isn't prescribed and helping cope like that?
That's a tough question.
Because the numbers,
there's kids out there in school that's just probably may not be doing it, but they just raised around it so much. Like, you can come to school and you smell like. The kid don't even know what it is. Like,
definitely.
Somebody telling them.
Especially at that young age, for sure.
Yeah. That's a tough question. It's a tough question because I think we, more than anyone, we're taxed with so much more than what any other generation has been.
Right.
Social media in itself is, it's the biggest one, right? So I think that, self-medicating, obviously, I'm not an advocate or a proponent for it. But one thing I want to say is that statistically, Black suicide rates among teenagers has gone up in the last couple of years. So that's not an area where people are paying a lot of attention, primarily because of the color of our skin. But Black suicide amongst teenagers has gone up.
If you could put the blame on that for something, what would you do? Like, what would be the blame for that? Would it be drugs? Would it be, a lack of...
I would say like the increased accessibility it is to reach these drugs.
How easy it is.
Right. Because even how they were just talking about last year, how 2020 was the year of the opioid crisis.
It's not.
And it raised from 2010, it was like 21,000 deaths from opioids. This last year was 46,000.
That teens these days, the suicide rates is going up within teens mainly because of drugs.
No, I don't know that for sure. I think it could be a factor. It's multiple things going on in this generation that leads to that.
Mental health, because like teens, they come across and they have anxiety real bad. They just don't know how to deal with it.
Right. Most people don't even know how to express to the parent or even a friend that they have those or suffer from things like that.
Well, that's what we try to do.
Exactly. That's why we're here, so we can get the conversation going.
Hey, bitch, woman's like,
I know it's multiple factors opposed to just that one criminalizing factor.
I think it's a multitude of things. I think it's not having support systems, not having good support systems. I think it has a lot to do with socioeconomic background, access to treatment. I mean, that's like probably the number one thing among African Americans, having adequate access to treatment. So if you don't have insurance and you're in a medical emergency and you really need to see a therapist, you can go to the emergency room, but the emergency room is going to give you referrals If you can't pay out of pocket, then what are you going to do? You are in a tough situation when you don't have insurance. You are in a tough situation when somebody, when you don't have insurance and you can't pay out of pocket. Because the emergency room is not equipped to deal with somebody that's going through a mental health crisis. Not most of the time, they're not. They're going to refer you out to go to outpatient treatment or inpatient treatment, but you have to have insurance. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I do too is I'm an assessor, and I assess for mental health issues. And a lot of times, if you don't have insurance in this area, you're going to go to the local county hospital. Well, you might sit in the hospital for 4 or 5 days before you actually get transferred to the county psychiatric.
And
so
I bet the service is different.
Right. So that goes back to having efficient, effective services, delivery of services. If you don't have insurance, you're not going to get the adequate amount of help that you need. It's not going to be as good as if you're going to a 5-star mental health facility where y'all are eating steak and salad every day. It's a significant difference when you don't have access, and as our communities of color, we don't have as much access as we should.
All right, it's actually a lot of other countries that are so progressive. They like their insurance for like things like mental health and honestly really just insurance for healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that interview was listening to earlier with Dr. Carl Hart. He was like, there's like stations set up.
Oh right, yeah, things are really progressive at other places,
like,
even for like rehabilitation.
Fixed, and then they go about their day.
Yeah, what was A$AP Rocky locked up?
A$AP, yeah.
No, A$AP Rocky when he was locked up. What country was that?
It was something.
Was it like Sweden or something?
No. It was something.
Ireland?
I forgot. But I remember in the place he was, like we seen the jail cell he was in. We see how like, comfortable it was for like compared to our jail cells over here. Like,
did you see the pictures? They like games.
I think they treat rehabilitation very different in other countries.
Yeah. And also, when you go back to the question about self-medicating, if you can't get to a clinician, and if you can't, say you're 15, 16, and people don't understand, it's like the school counselor is pretty much academics. Like your school counselor does your schedule, they do the master schedule, they do the testing. So a lot of times in a lot of schools, if you look at the schools in those surrounding counties, you're going to see more school resource officers than you are going to see mental health professionals. And when there are mental health professionals there, it's not enough to go around. So if you're 15 or 16 and you're dealing with a mental health crisis or you're dealing with something at home, it's easier for you to smoke weed than it could be easier for you to smoke weed than it is to try to find somebody to talk to and get the resources that you need. Okay. So that's how the self-medicating can come into play, especially if you don't have a strong support system at home. So it's all these little things that kind of intertwine and interweave with each other that cause these types of mental health issues that it's been exacerbated by a lack of support, a lack of resources, a lack of clinicians. All of that plays a factor.
When you were growing up, did you have someone to give you that guidance or reassurance when you found out that you were suffering from anxiety?
Well, I didn't start suffering from anxiety until I became until I got in my 20s, and I think it just came from the pressure of trying to do everything and be everything and just trying expectations. So it's not something that I struggled with during my teenage years or anything like that. But I will say, I posted about it on my Facebook. It's just as debilitating as anything else. Having a panic attack, not being able to breathe, everything is spinning around you, breaking out. It's just as debilitating as somebody having any other sickness. So, it's not something I struggled with earlier in life, but it's something that I struggle with now. Okay,
because I know personally for me, when I was growing up, I did suffer from anxiety and other things, but because I was so young, I didn't know what it actually was,
right,
to put a name on it. And in our community, people, we're just taught to push through it, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Just walk it up.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it too is just as bad as social media can be, it can be just as great, right? So now that we have more resources, we know, like parents know now, these could be symptoms of depression, these could be symptoms of anxiety, right, versus, I'm in my 30s, but my mom would have just kind of probably, not because she didn't care, But because she didn't just have that information and those resources like that, because my mom is very supportive, still to this day, she's very supportive of me and my brother. But it's just now, you know, people have more access to resources. So I feel like some parents are, you know, they're more supportive now.
So what about because, you know, there are people that live and their parents, I guess you can call them supportive, but, you know, in the Black community, a lot of, especially fathers, they neglect the fact that, you know, their children could have mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times it sticks with those children until they grow up. So how do you get to somebody who he's used to just...
at some point once you grow up, because the child can't do nothing about that if the mom and daddy can't help it or just neglect to help. The only thing that child can do, I feel like, is to reach out to somebody else to get some help, or just do it themselves.
But the
And
thing
that's
is,
where the drugs comes and stuff come in, where they try to do it themselves. But it's because it's a lack of resources. Once you turn 18, what you thinking about? You're not thinking about going to the therapist.
Well, I think I think that's one thing about us being more aware. We find therapy to be cool, kind of cool. Like when you hear, oh, I gotta go see my therapist. Like, no, that's not a stigma among people. Like nobody's gonna be like, ooh, you go see a therapist. I don't feel like, I don't have, you know, type of friends that say that. And it's actually kind of cool to go to therapy. At least I think so. You know, a lot of my friends, or even people, you know, I've been around, oh, well, do you have a therapist? So I think that it's becoming less and less of a stigma, as opposed to maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it's becoming less of a stigma.
I think the perception for sure has changed since then.
It's changing, it's gotten better, but it still has a long way to go.
Back to my point with how do you get to somebody who's, I want to say stubborn, who knows they need help, but like they won't ask. Because I know for a fact I'm stubborn. And when I need help, I didn't ask for nothing. I'm not gonna ask you. And then they'll tell me, you know, you go to therapy or this, I won't do it.
Well, how did you get the help? How do you get the help that you need?
Well, how I did it is one day I exploded. And after I exploded, it took a couple of people to just, you know, sit there and tell me like, hey man, you need help or you're gonna end up hurting somebody or yourself. But the thing is with me, though it wasn't too late, it was still a bad time. Like I finally was like, okay, you know, how do you get to people before it's too late? Because, you know, in situations like that, you could end up hurting somebody or yourself, so far as like suicide. You know, like you said, they don't have the resources, but you know, how do you get to them to let them know like, hey, you know, you may not have these big resources to get to, but there are things to do. Like you don't have to be so stubborn and try to do it yourself, because going the path of drugs, you know, that could lead to a whole different place. Or just, you know, lashing out just because, you know, you're angry or whatever, you know. How do you get to these people that are pretty much stubborn and don't know how to?
Well, the one thing, you have to have the desire to get help, you know. So if you're around somebody that does not have the desire to seek help, then the best thing that I would suggest that you do is you create them a support system. So you let their mom know, you let their dad, you constantly check in, because how many times do we know a friend that's not doing well, but we not checking in with them? So it's constant, having constant check-ins, having other people to check in with that person, because ultimately you can't force somebody to go into, you know, rehab. You can't force them to go to treatment, but you can keep up. You can keep up with communicating with them. You can have other people around that communicate with them. The number one thing that people are missing a lot of times when we're struggling with mental health issues is a safe relationship. That's the number one, you know, when we talk about trauma in the Black community, and it's the number one thing that people need to kind of counter the traumas that they experience is good relationships. So everything starts with a good relationship. If I'm in a depressive state and you're constantly checking in on me, then I know, okay, somebody cares. I'm not in this by myself. When you're at home by yourself, you know, nobody's calling, nobody's thinking about you, that just makes everything a lot worse. It makes you feel like you're in it by yourself. So if you have people constantly checking on you, that's the first place to start. That's the very first place to start, is trying to build good relationships.
I think you made a great point about that, Jack, as far as the stubbornness. Because I know for me, when I truly just realized I had anxiety was when I was at Prairie View for my last semester, living on campus. And it was really just me up there, so I was really suffering from depression, anxiety, and a couple other things. And even though we were all just, you know, we were talking, throughout that time, because we all just had our stuff going on, we still kept in contact. I never really just made that known or just alerted that until I had my first panic attack and realized, okay, I definitely do need to see someone about this because this is a serious thing that I need to handle. Now, fortunately for me, I had a good support system at home where I could like tell my people and they could, direct me to the next steps. And at one point I was even on some antidepressants for it. I realized personally, the pills weren't for me. I didn't like how they made me feel. Not to say that other people shouldn't try them. I might just be more of a therapy person. So I would, explore that avenue or path before just relying on pills to primarily start off with, if you do believe you're also suffering something like that.
It's so many different modalities of treatment, and that's why we have to get outside of just, thinking therapy is great, pills are great, but there's so many things that you can do that for treatment, just other than going to a therapist or getting on medication. Changing your eating habits will change the way you feel.
I heard a lot of girls tell me that.
Changing a lot. One of the things that people use in so many studies, you'll see them talk about music and what music does to treat trauma, because music, a lot of people that have experienced trauma don't have like a regular routine in their life. So music is a pattern. It keeps the same pattern. It keeps the same rhythm. So that's a flow of consistency. So that's used to treat trauma. Yoga, like it's so many different things you can do to calm your mind, body, and spirit. And so it doesn't just have to be one of the other. If you know somebody that they're not gonna go, to therapy, maybe they'll go exercise with you. If they're not going to go, if they don't feel like they need to get on medication, maybe, they'll go make some pizza or something. But it's so many different things you can do outside of that. And I think treatment, most studies and most research are done on white people. I mean, that's just the truth about it. So a lot of times when we're looking at these studies, they're not studying black people and what black people need. So what our treatment is going to look totally different than treatment for non-black people.
Yeah. I like that point because like he told me earlier, I draw, so I was drawing something for my uncle, and he was like, hey man, maybe you should start drawing a little bit more because you seem peaceful and calm, right?
Yeah, I said that earlier.
And it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
Because I've been told that I need to get on medication for certain mental problems that I do have, but I'm stubborn. I don't like hospitals and I don't like taking medicine.
Yeah.
I just truly don't.
Yeah.
So I've had certain friends like these guys and certain other friends that have told me, hey man, try this, or try this, and this. And more and more it's like, I kind of figured out like medicine would probably not be for us. I don't want to just say that it's only for white people, but at the same time, they usually are the ones that really do need the medicine. For as us, it's more of getting in tune with things that we like and more that we're compatible with. Like me with drawing, I like to draw. So,
well, I think medicine could be. You have, like you said, you have to decide if it's for you. If you take it and you think I don't like the way it makes me feel, then don't take it. If it's really affecting you in that way, then maybe you have to find something that maybe with a higher or lower dosage or a different medication. But I definitely think that one of the biggest problems that I see is a lack of black clinicians. We are more likely to seek help with somebody that looks like us. I know that's been my experience, and that makes a big difference in your treatment if you're talking to someone that looks like you, that can know that speaks the same language as you. My therapist, I can say the N-word, I can go in there and cuss, I can say all of those things, and she's not going to look at me like, I'm crazy. But if I go to maybe somebody that's non-black, it might be a different experience. So you just have to keep, if drawing works for you, you keep drawing, but you can't draw 24/7, you know what I'm saying? Right. So, when you find yourself getting into whatever it is that you struggle with, you might not be able to draw your way out of it. So you might need other coping skills and resources and tools.
Well, that's informational for me.
Yeah. I'm a music guy. Music always helps me when I'm going through a lot.
Yeah.
We definitely appreciate you coming down with us with McCoy and sharing your knowledge. It was a huge, helpful experience, and we're glad we could do that with you. Can you please let our viewers know where they can reach you out?
Hi, my name is Destiny McCoy. You can find me on Instagram on Wellness FTC. That is a healing space for African American professional women and entrepreneurial women, and I hope to see you there. It's Wellness FTC. Thank you.
We're gonna have all of that in the link in the description below. Please do. All right, we the bench warmers. We just venting.
You know, I was just venting, man. You know.